News from 1969.
Good evening. It's July the 17th, 1969, day 2 of NASA's mission into the history books. Up in space, the astronauts have travelled so far, they're already closer to the moon than to Earth, around 150,000 miles away from us down here and moving at an incredible 3,000 miles an hour. If all goes to plan, that means we are on schedule for the moon landing on July the 20th. This morning, Houston Mission Control gave the astronauts an update on the big news stories here on Earth. And as you'd expect, top of the list was Apollo 11 and their spectacular liftoff from Florida yesterday. In the last few moments, they've begun a TV transmission. So what's the view of Earth like from space?
We're seeing the center of the Earth viewed from the spacecraft in the eastern Pacific Ocean, but we can clearly see the western coast of North America, Mexico down as far as Acapulco, and you can see on through Central America.
So, a chance for the astronauts to do some sightseeing from their spacecraft. They're travelling in what's called the Command Service Module, and this tin can will be their cramped living quarters over the next few days. Here's Peter Snow to take a closer look at the module and its journey to the moon.
Well, John, let's go back to those first moments just after liftoff and still 3 days' travel from the moon. The astronauts were already preparing for the lunar landing. They were in low Earth orbit for just 2.5 hours before the final stage of the Saturn V rocket was ignited for a second time to give the spacecraft enough speed to leave behind the Earth's gravitational pull and begin the journey to the moon. Right now, they're still on that journey, and the next step will come in 2 days' time, when the astronauts will fire an engine to shift their spacecraft into lunar orbit. Then it's almost time for the astronauts to split up. The Command Service Module, nicknamed Columbia, will stay in orbit for the duration of the moon landing. The pilot, Michael Collins, will be the astronaut who stays behind. As its name implies, the Command Service Module is divided into 2 main parts. The Service Module provides power and storage space, and this part of the spacecraft will be jettisoned and left to burn up in the atmosphere as the Command Module begins its final journey home. The Command Module is just 10 feet 7 inches, or about 3 meters tall. This is life-size. It's the vehicle which will carry the astronauts back to Earth. Now take a look inside. Pretty cramped for 3 strapping astronauts. And this tiny capsule will be the only part of the Saturn V rocket and Apollo 11 spacecraft not to be discarded along the way. It's basically a cone shape, and this shape is vitally important to keep the capsule aerodynamically stable as it falls to Earth blunt end first. Now that means only that end, the blunt end, needs a heat shield. Friction with the Earth's atmosphere will take the external temperature to almost 3,000 degrees centigrade. That's half the temperature of the sun's surface. But that moment is still many days off. First, we must wait to see if the astronauts can complete their mission to the moon.
Thanks, Peter. Well, Columbia may be cramped, but it's the astronaut's spacesuit, which has been described as the smallest spaceship in the world, and it's just as vital for his survival. Our science editor, Peter Fairley, has been finding out how the kit and the lunar module, which will hopefully take 2 astronauts to the moon's surface, will help them on their mission.
I'm wearing the full lunar suit, except the helmet, including I'm wearing what have been nicknamed the lunar galoshes, which are special overshoes, specially insulated to keep the astronaut's feet cool while he walks on the surface of the moon, where the temperature at times can become hot enough to melt lead. Underneath the lunar bug is the main descent engine, which slows it down from a speed originally of about 3,000 miles an hour to a mere 5 or 10 miles an hour for the landing. Underneath here also is the landing radar, which tells the lunanauts how close to the moon they've come. The base of the moonship houses fuel tanks, batteries, cooling equipment, and also the tools that the lunanauts will use on the surface of the moon. And here is the moon toolkit. It includes the lunar tongs, the moon hammer, and the moon shovel. Lunar bug's been called a daddy long legs for obvious reasons, but the interesting thing about its legs are that they have their own built-in shock absorbers. But the interesting thing is that below them, as it comes into land, will project steel rods 5 feet long. The purpose of these is to touch the moon first and tell the moonship's main engine when to switch off. That last free drop of 5 feet is going to be crucial, because on Earth it takes 400 people to launch a rocket from a specially constructed flat firing pad. On the moon, the 2 men have got to do it themselves, and so they've got to land on an even keel and not on a tilt. Well, I'm sweating a bit, and I expect they will be when the moment comes. Peter Fairley, ITN, from the simulated surface of the moon.
Well, as the astronauts glide through space, back home, among the millions watching their amazing journey, are a small group who are following it just that little more closely than most. Amazingly, the astronauts' wives have been given special communications equipment so they can listen in to NASA and the spacecraft 24 hours a day. Well, a short time ago, Buzz Aldrin's wife, Joan, spoke about her feelings.
Mrs. Aldrin, what is your reaction to the flight so far?
I'm excited, of course, and very tense.
What was the emotion in the house when the rocket blasted off?
Things were really very quiet. There was a lot of emotion going on, but there were no screams, no yells, just very quiet.
Mrs. Alden, you say you're very tense. Your husband obviously discussed the flight with you in detail. Which part of the flight are you most tense about?
Well, wouldn't you? You know the answer to that one. It will be Monday morning.
Mrs. Alden, do you have a squawk box in your house?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Are you going to keep it on all the time?
Probably, as long as I can understand it.
Proud lady. Well, during these programs, we hope to answer many of your questions about this mission. And if you ever wondered, how do you shave in zero gravity? Well, here's the answer. Mike Collins obviously wants to look his best for the cameras. NASA, by the way, spent thousands of dollars developing an electric razor with an attached vacuum cleaner before they discovered that a simple aerosol shaving foam worked best. Well, the latest update from NASA has reported that everything is on track for the moon landing. For now, though, good night and thanks for watching.